Hello, this is Sweetie Berry with Between Us Girls, a conversation between the women at Dare Whimsy, a community for gifted and creative women. We apologize for technical difficulties and we're so glad you're with us. I look forward to being with you today. Our topic is going to be, what about self-talk? Self-talk is the conversation that we have inside our heads in response to whatever actions or reactions that we have for our activities. Self-talk can be an absolutely empowering part of your life. It can also be one of the things we do to self-destruct. Today, I've invited Dr. Edith Johnson, Sarah L. Cook, Martina McGowan, and several others such as Lucy Ann Mall and Bobby Gorman, gifted women and creative women in their own right, who are leaders, teachers, moms, sisters, and women themselves with gifted and creative abilities. We're going to use this time to talk about how self-talk affects our lives, our families, and the people we work with. I'm looking forward to being with you. My background is gifted education. I'm a strategist in my adult life. I've spent 20 years in the classroom, and now my classroom is the world. I work with authors and speakers and small businesses. We're live, and I see Dr. Martina McGowan has joined us. She's a gynecologist. She's a minister. She's also a writer, well known for her easy steps, things to do to create change. She's with us today as a mom, a doctor, an author, a minister, and someone who will absolutely be able to relate to self-talk. Good morning, Martina.
Good morning, Shannon. How are you this morning?
I'm great. It's a busy day here in Nashville. We're seeing a lot of snow and all kinds of fun things on the way, so I may get to sled down to Alabama today.
Well, being a Yankee myself, I'm quite used to that. So just be careful, go slow, take extra time.
Absolutely. Today, Between Us Girls are discussing self-talk and self-care through self-talk. And I'm looking forward to hearing your perspective on how self-talk affects our psyche as well as our health.
It affects us in many ways. First, we have to discuss what self-talk is. It's the little voice that runs around our head and tells us what to do, what not to do. We should go here, we shouldn't go there. It also gives us some cue of how we think about ourselves, whether we think well of ourselves, I'm smart, I can do this, I'm super bad, or that when we don't think so well of ourselves, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I screwed that up, and sometimes that can escalate into feeling that we're not good at anything at all. Obviously, this causes a psychological burden, and thinking that we can't do something or can't be something can easily turn over into never ever trying to be something. That's where we start to do damage to ourselves, and we shut ourselves down psychologically and physically, and we just implode because we have to put that energy someplace.
Absolutely. One of the things, as a teacher of young children, I work with profoundly gifted young children for a period of time, and one of the things I recognized early on is there are lots of times that self-talk can be very encouraging. I can do this, like the little engine that could. We can say things like, I can do this, I can do this, I can learn this. And other times we say, oh, I can't handle it. Oh, it's just hard. And whatever we're saying to ourselves, we create in our reality. And in the learning situation, it's so important for a teacher, an educator, a parent, or a trusted advisor to be able to affirm what they can do first and to not limit that. I work with multi-handicapped children often, and I often work with traumatic brain injury gifted kids where they had tremendous abilities, and then an injury had caused us to not know exactly what their injuries would prevent from happening or cause to be more complex or difficult. And so one of the parts of self-talk that I saw up close in person was whatever we project to things or project to others about what they can do, if they are vulnerable to our suggestions, they trust us. They're vulnerable because they're young and we are older. We can truly prevent people from believing they can do anything. And that's an important thing to do. But more importantly, as an adult, I've learned that self-talk is something we can prevent ourselves from doing. Some people call that the self-sabotage or the saboteur. For me personally, I've laughed and laughed in the last year because Michael Bublé puts out a song that talks about all these wonderful parts of a relationship and how he's going to have this relationship that works and it's going to be better for them and better for him and it's going to just be wonderful and they're going to grow and have this fantastic life. He says at the end of the song, I just haven't met her yet. Well, in my world, I sing that song to myself all the time about the little girl inside of me, the grown-up who's fighting to be the little girl grown up. And I changed that word instead of I just haven't met her yet to I just haven't learned that yet. When I learn to be more organized, when I learn to be kinder to myself, when I learn to stop when I'm tired, when I learn to feed myself adequately in better choices of food, I'll enjoy my life better. And I've kind of gotten a breather on that because instead of beating myself up now and saying, oh, I did it again, I stop and say, I just haven't learned that yet. And sometimes I realize the price of learning is worth learning at that very moment. I'm having one of those experiences in Nashville this morning. It's about 28 degrees, and I normally have an extra coat in the trunk of my car, and I pack a coat when I'm traveling to fly or to be out somewhere else. But I changed cars at the last minute yesterday, and I don't have a plan for that. So when I got to Nashville, I was in a silk dress and high heels and no coat in 28-degree windy weather. And I had a learning experience about what the checkoff should be about my coat in the car or my coat with me, because I thought I had that system handled, that I left one in that car all the time. It's multi-level and you can take out the liner to make it a lighter weight coat. But let me assure you, the program failed yesterday. You know what? I could have gone into, oh, you're so stupid, you forgot your coat again, you just had to buy one a few weeks ago, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But instead, the response was, well, you made a mistake. You were in a hurry and without enough margin. That kind of cost you today. What can we do to solve it because you don't want to get sick? And you know what? That was a kinder, gentler way to deal with the problem at hand. And the choice is made. And the choice was corrected in 3 minutes flat. I went into a Goodwill. There was exactly the coat I wanted, exactly the kind I was looking for that's no longer made. There it was for $6. Put it on. Felt like $1 million and went straight to the dinner I had. And it worked just fine. In fact, the audience laughed and laughed and laughed as I shared the picture of me coming into the hotel frozen with a little bit of snow coming down that someone snapped for me as I was walking through, and they'd shared it with me on social media, and then I showed them what it was really like to get there unprepared in a silk dress. So, you know, it's laughing at ourselves, learning to be okay with those kind of moments in the self-talk, but it's more than that too. And I see some more of our friends have been able to find the new room. Dr. Edith Johnston is here. I'd like to introduce her in the conversations about self-talk. Martina and I kind of talked about what the definition of that is. I'd like Dr. Johnston to talk about how it can prevent or empower things to get done in your life.
Hi, Dr. Johnston here. To prevent or empower your life, it's really important to know that you can make that choice. So let's start with the fact that you have to be aware of your self-talk and aware of the fact that you do have that choice. And so in how and what you say to yourself, and in how and what you believe about yourself, which comes out then in your self-talk, makes a difference in what you accomplish, what you do, what your energy level is, what you can be able to relate to others, how you see yourself. So thinking about what choices you have, how you can handle the situation, because you can only control your own feelings, your own thoughts, and your own behaviors. So thoughts is the starting point. What is it that you want as an outcome? What is it you want to experience as part of your process? Think about it. How are your thoughts going? What is the sequence of those thoughts? Like Sweetie was sharing, and I'm sure Dr. Gowan has shared, is that if I think I'm a mess and that's not good and it won't result in anything good, then you know what? I'm going to follow through with the behaviors that go with that. So be aware of what you are thinking. Be aware of what your choices are. Make good choices so that you can say, you know what? I may not have made all the right decisions, but today I'm going to look at it again and see what choice I want to make. What is it, the behavior I want to demonstrate so that I can have a greater potential of having others' reactions to me be in the way that I would like to provide to them. Respecting myself, respecting others. I think about that by being aware about that and then go and act on it.
Absolutely. You know, I love the way that you and Dr. Martina spend time letting us know what happens and what the realm of our thinking is. Because gifted girls are really amazing, but they also have some really amazing commonalities. And one of them is what I call all or nothing thinking. Another one is it's not of value if it's not hard. We self-monitor ourselves, and sometimes we have some very mistaken identities. And the common public also, and I don't mean that we're uncommon, but we also have a public perception that things that are easy for us are our responsibilities. And so sometimes our self-talk has to come into the space of self-preservation. You know, it's not all or nothing on yes or no. or whether it's good or bad in our life, the actions that we take. It's also self-preservation, self-talk. I could do that, but is it my job to do that? Is a great question to learn in your self-talking. I can do that, but is it my job to do that? That's a self-talk conversation that I've had to learn to have as an adult, because I often have a pass-off, and the pass-off is, oh, that's so easy for you. You'll take care of that for us, won't you? Wow, talk about a soft serve. That means that they've assumed you'll do it, and they've praised you to say yes. You know, we have to be aware that some people do have agendas. Some people truly want our help, but some people really have agendas, and there's not an age identifier on that. I guarantee you that a 2.5-year-old that I love has an agenda of making sure we make it to the candy jar as soon as she gets to my house. I also had an 8-month-old son who had an agenda of making sure I rocked with him at late night instead of just going and putting himself to sleep. He knew what he was doing. He was just 8 months old, but he could only do it when I was around. So I had to wake up and say, this isn't just normal. This is me. It's an agenda with me, because he didn't want his dad or his grandmother or other people. He wanted mama. And so we have to learn that manipulation can be positive and it can be negative, but it can also affect how we're perceiving ourselves. Because if someone's calling you a label, you're so stupid, you're so arrogant, you're so something, it's very easy to absorb that label and bring it into our self-talk. And if we've had people who raised us who were not very healthy or very unaware of how to speak to children, we may have what we call, Martina and I call it the wolves in our head. The wolves that say, you silly child, you stupid child, you're just so lazy. Whatever those words pronouncing over us, as adults, we may pronounce those words over ourselves if we're not careful, in particular, about how we talk to ourselves. One of the things that I'm so excited about with having Bobby Gorman and Lucianne Mall and Sarah here today is we all work with women. We all have children in our lives. We all have spouses or friends in our lives. We all have positions of leadership where we see every day how our own self-talk affects us, and we see how others' self-talk affects them. And in the gifted realm, that's particularly true. I had a conversation this morning with a client, and the conversation was this. I just came off of a 5-day city tour. I've worked for 5 years to achieve all that I wanted to achieve, and it's still not what I considered Mecca. Wow, her all-or-nothing thinking in that moment made no allowance for all the effort and all the growth and all the things she did, like write a book and make a movie and be on television shows and be one of the largest people in her area. It was an all-or-nothing statement, probably due to exhaustion, because that's when we talk to ourselves the harshest. But I had to stop and say, hey, as the strategist, let's review what happened in that 5 years. You finished school, you started a business, you created income, you were in the financial black from year one, you sold books, you wrote companion products, you developed 13 more products. There is a lot of progress made in this 5 years towards the Mecca you identified. Now we have the business end of the Mecca handled. Let's work on the personal pleasure part of it, the trips, the travel, the things you want to do for fun. So many times we may need to deconstruct what the feeling is we're having and use self-talk to get it back to where we want it to go. I said earlier, where all the rest of us joined, that I love Michael Bublé's song that says, I just haven't met her yet. And I changed the words in my head to, I just haven't learned that yet when a mistake or difficulty comes. And that helps me remember that it is learnable, that we are teachable. When we choose to be teachable, our self-talk can light the path. I bet there's an answer for this. It's a great one I teach children. I bet there's an answer I can learn. I bet I can learn to do this. I bet I can learn where that's given. I bet I can learn how to hire that in business. I bet I can identify what needs to be hired in business. Those kind of self-talks release the pressure of you doing everything yourself and knowing everything yourself and recognizing that somebody else can help. Miss Bobby is with us today, and I'd love for her to talk about self-talk because she has just done tremendous work in that area with children and with herself, and I'd love to hear what she has to say about it in her own life as well as others. Bobby, you need to unmute. There you go. Welcome, Bobby Gorman.
Thank you. I just actually had this come up today. Another kids pastor sent me a message and said, I have a 5-year-old that acts out in church, and we've tried everything from sending him back to his parents to, threatening him, to rewarding him, to everything, and the parents aren't any help, and all they do is defend their child. So I talked with her extensively this morning, and I said, let me ask you a question. I said, that mom, everywhere she takes that 5-year-old child, gets, your child's a problem, your child does this, your child does that. What do you think that mom is telling herself everywhere she takes this child? I said, let's look at it from the outside perspective. But from the inside perspective, when the other kids pastor looked at it, she's like, I can imagine that what I'm saying to her, she's going to take that in and she's going to say that to herself. I was that mom. I had the child that everywhere he went, they said, oh, well, he did this, or oh, well, he did that. Well, later we found out that he was a gifted boy that was bored, and so that was the best way he could get attention. But as a mom, I kept thinking, I'm a failure because I don't know what to do with my child. I don't know how to do it. So it wasn't, I have a child who's acting out, let's find a reason for that. It was, obviously, I'm a failure as a mom. So that's what I was telling myself, and that's exactly what we're talking about today. Whatever it is that we tell ourselves, that's what we believe.
Gosh, that's such an important thing. What we tell ourselves, we believe. And I want to do a segue to Sarah on this, because one thing that Sarah does so beautifully well with her systems management and working with entrepreneurs and women with their systems is she aligns the steps. She deconstructs things. Because you know what? Just like building a fire and putting kindling down and cotton down, then little pieces of wood, then larger pieces of wood, very often the self-talk comes because there's a big blow-up. And we haven't deconstructed what made the fire hot. Okay? I know for me personally, my self-talk happens in a negative light when I haven't had enough rest, when I haven't fed myself well, when I put myself in the company of people who are toxic for too long, when I've said yes too often, when I've been in a place where I just don't respect myself as much as I respect somebody else's immediacy needs. Wow. When Sarah helped me understand the deconstruct of what was happening to my self-talk, because I thought I was pretty good as a teacher. As far as talking in my classroom, I was great, but my self-talk was still difficult. Oh, I wish I'd done more lesson plans. Oh, I wish I'd done a different PowerPoint. Oh, I wish I'd gotten to this, that, and the other. And the problem wasn't me doing more. The problem was me doing too much. And Sarah looked at that problem in the self-talk and said, you're not lazy. You're not any of that. What you are is overworked, and I need more help. You're doing too much. And she helped me deconstruct that into a new self-talk saying, I manage my time well. I get help and receive help when I'm ready to. In fact, she makes fantastic products for individuals once she works with you to let you know exactly the kind of things in self-talk that you learn to talk new talk. Some of us need to learn to talk differently, and we may need a tape or a DVD or a list to look at. For me, it's visual. I like the list in front of me to have those self-talk reminders. Sarah, I'd love for you to share about that a little bit.
Thank you. Well, one of the first things that I start with when I'm transitioning from old self-talk to new self-talk is I start catching myself, and I recommend other people catch themselves as well. And so if you say something, like if Sweetie was saying, gosh, I'm so lazy, I didn't get all these things done, I would say, wow, that's so unlike you to say that. That's so unlike you to say that. And then that's what I started saying to myself. If I would say, oh, I'm so stupid, why did I do that? I say, that's interesting. That's so unlike you to say that to yourself. And so it begins with identifying what is it that I'm saying that I don't want to have be true, because what we profess, we possess. The things that we say become our realities. And so I used to say, I'm so broke, we can't afford that. No, we can't buy that. And instead I'd say, wow, that's so unlike me to say that. Of course, I have plenty of income for all the needs and the righteous desires of my heart. I have exactly what I need, and I'm allowing more to come into my life. But it started with first recognizing and acknowledging what was actually happening in the head, and then being verbalized through the mouth, and then what was happening in my life, because your life is a reflection of previous thoughts and previous comments. And we transformed our finances that way. I transformed my health that way. I've transformed relationships that way. And all of it began with thinking, first, what am I saying and affirming? What do I want to have happen? So what will I change that to? And then affirming when you start seeing things happen. For example, I have this whole cup full of money on my desk. I used to never, ever have cash. And so it was very authentic for me to say I'm broke, because I never, ever had any cash or any money for that. But if I even dared to say that now, that would be a complete lie. And so I had to start pulling money out of the account and putting it on my desk so I could not say it as a fact, to my children, we don't have any cash for that. I had to tell them the truth. I'm choosing not to spend my money on that, but if you would like to spend your money on that, that is fine. That's your choice. Mommy is choosing not to spend money on that. So I never ever tell them we're broke, we can't afford that, we can't buy that. I never ever say that. But I used to say that a lot, and it wasn't until I started deconstructing, like Sweetie talked about, to say, this is what I don't want to have happen, and this is what I do want to have happen. Here's the steps to get there, that those things changed.
I love that, Sarah. One of the things that I love to talk about with my clients and my students is, what are the stories you're telling yourself, and who told you that story? You know, David Bullock writes and does a fantastic job of story content in your life and in your business. And one of the things he teaches is that, what are the stories in your life, and who told you those stories, and are they true? Or were they once true? Are they no longer true? Could they be true in the future? What part of that is your responsibility? You know, I was told that whimsical was a great thing until I was about 4 years old. And then somebody told me at 4 years of age or 5 years of age that people who were too whimsical were thought to be crazy. Wow, you talk about self-talk. I'm a high creative. I'm whimsical when I breathe. And suddenly someone interjected the thought that if I was whimsical, I was mentally ill. Wow, that self-talk changed my life in many, many ways for many years. Then someone else I trusted said later, that's just not true. Stop telling yourself that story. Your whimsicalness is part of the best part of who you are, and it's certainly the part you should feed and enjoy. It feeds us and helps us enjoy our life when you teach that way. What stories are you telling yourself in your self-talk? Are you telling your story that you're improving and getting better, that you're teachable and willing to learn, that you have boundaries and are willing to live in a place that's safe for you emotionally, financially, physically, structurally, relationally? Those stories are in your mind already. My question to you is, what stories are they? You know, I told myself that it was easy to lose weight in August. It had not been easy to lose weight for many years. But I started telling myself that it was easy to lose weight. At the same time, I made some choices about how I functioned. And in that process, not only did I start losing weight easily, but it became easy to stick to it. Because when you're telling yourself you want to do this, and you're telling yourself it's easy to do that, your mind is open to learning to do it. And how we choose to be open to be teachable, you know, I always say success is learnable. Are you teachable? Choosing is a choice. What choices are you making in your self-talk? That's today's topic at Between Us Girls, the Women of Dare Whimsy from DareWhimsy.com. We have Lucy-Ann Mall with us today, who's a biblical counselor, and she's going to be talking to us about how self-talk can be destructive, as well as her own experiences with self-talk with her children. She has an adopted child, or several adopted children, as well as a husband and a practice, and she has all kinds of things to share. Welcome, Lucy.
Yeah, thank you so much, sweetie. Yeah, as everybody's been talking, I've been writing notes, and one thing that's really interesting, you mentioned that Martina had said about wolves in your head. Right now, I'm finishing up a talk called "Get the Ants Out of Your Head," and ANT is an acronym for automatic negative thinking. So get the ants out of your head, the automatic negative thinking. And in addition to working on that talk, I'm also have got most of a thought journal put together, because when I work with my counselees in biblical counseling, I would have to say easily 90% of them tell themselves things that aren't true. And you know, as a biblical counselor, we're coming from it, is it true according to what God says about you? You know, because God says, you know, to Christians that we are chosen, we are loved, that we are redeemed, that we are the daughter of the Most High King. So when someone starts telling themselves things that don't line up with that, then they're basically, I guess you could say, lying to themselves, not necessarily intentionally, but they've been believing, you mentioned stories, they've been believing an untrue story that they've embraced. And just real quick, when I was young, and I remember, you know, even in my 20s and 30s, I was going through a lot of I recognized that I was believing stories that were not true. And one of them was, Lucy, you are a defect. And it's like, okay, where, like you were saying, sweetie, like, where did that come from? Why would I be telling myself, Lucy, you are a defect? You know, it's kind of like other people might say a waste of space, but I went that you're defective. And so I used scripture and music. Music was powerful. It would speak to my soul, but, you know, uplifting, truthful music I would listen to, as well as I just remember the one verse I used a lot from, it's in the Gospel of John, John 10:10, the first part. The thief, which is Satan, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So through my thinking, it was like saying to myself, Lucy, you're a defect. It was...
That is absolutely the kind of self-talk we're talking about that's in the negative pattern. It can also be exuberance thinking. I can do anything. I can do all things. And you know, you probably can do all things if you've prepared and done the preparation and done the steps to do it, and it's a realistic goal. I sometimes have to work with gifted children who are profoundly gifted, and they can do almost anything. In fact, they could be engineers who go to the moon. But there's a process to get there. You know, if you're 5'4" and want to be an NBA champion, there's a process to get there. It's going to be harder for you because you're 5'4" in the National Basketball Association, but there's a process to get there. And magical thinking sometimes doesn't take into account what it takes to get there. And we come up with wrong outcomes in our thinking of why it happened. You know, somebody would say you're not very organized, and that's why you don't have a coat in Nashville today. That's one way of saying it. Another way of saying it would be, when someone interrupts your pattern, sometimes balls get dropped. And that's more of a mistake than a personally intentional drop ball. You know, there's a difference between intentional patterns that just every single day create a bad response, and then it allows us to more easily go into that negative self-talk, and then recognizing something is just an accident or a mistake. Gifted girls so often in my classroom have such a self-talk issue with when a mistake happens. There's embarrassment, sometimes there's anger, sometimes there's grief that they've worked so long and so hard, and then they got stomach sick the morning they were produced and didn't even get to do their speech. Sometimes there is overthinking of what it would have been, and it didn't turn out to be what they thought it would be at all. In other words, their whole life outcome was for this one moment, and that moment ended. You know, I see a lot of brides do that they've spent 2 or 3 years or 2 or 3 decades in some cases planning the perfect wedding, and the wedding is about 23 minutes of your married life. And they may have spent all of their money and all of their income and all of their time doing this one event, which is wonderful. There's nothing wrong with having a great event. But if your self-talk is, that's the moment I've been waiting for, and the moment passes, your self-talk may need to change. And if you've been ingrained in that thinking for a long time, wow, it can be a crisis for you at that very moment. I bought a car one time. You've heard me speak of it before. I saw that everybody else who was popular and cool had a certain car, and so I waited and waited and waited to buy that car. And finally, I bought the brand new version of that car. And guess what? I tried it on as I left the parking lot with the brand new car that I owned papers on, and I hated it. My self-talk could have been, you're silly, you're stupid, what wasted time? Instead, because I had been working on it with some other things I was doing, I immediately said, it's not working for me. 3 months later, in fact, Sarah was in the car with me in Atlanta. It isn't working for me. This car is going to be gone, and I'll have another one quickly. And sure enough, I tried on another one, and it fit perfectly and went right down the road. Our self-talk needs to have an ability to stop, think through what's happening, align it to the truths that we've experienced. And if we've had a lot of negative experience, we may need to align it to somebody else's truths. We may need a coach or a counselor or a trusted friend to run that self-talk by, to say, does this sound like me? Is this who I am? Do you see this in me? I know a few of you personally as well as professionally, and I know each one of us have go-to places where we're deceived about who we are. We have a story in our head that no longer even fits who we are. You know, one of my favorite things about Sarah, and I'll tease her because I know she can handle it, is that she's got cute hair today. You see that cute hair? Sarah's got her hair thrown on top of her head, looks so stylish she could be on New York Fashion Week. But Sarah told me before the show that she threw it up because she didn't have time to do a lot else with it. Her self-talk could have been, I'm running late. I didn't do it. I'm having to do my hair up. Oh! Instead, she said, this is fun. This is fantastic. And I'm going to toss it up and have a blast with it. And she did. That's an empowering self-talk. Some of us need to tell ourselves the next step because we're not used to doing that step yet. I'm comfortable speaking to an audience, is what an author might say in my realm. I'm comfortable. I'm well received by my audience because that helps them focus on the fact to do the actions to be well received. But just saying something doesn't magically make it happen. You have to do the prep, and you have to let go of the deceptions you have about yourself and your self-talk. Some of us are deceived because we don't have enough experience in an area. You know, for a person who is at a certain level of experience, they may think it's really mean for the speaker not to come out and congregate with the people before the speech. A person with a little more experience might recognize that the speaker needs the downtime to be able to really focus on doing a great job for the audience and not mess up the schedule when someone talks to them too long. A person with even more experience might recognize that it protects the audience's response to not have an emotional experience when they don't get to speak to the speaker right before the thing started. It's a protection process. But if you don't have the experience as a speaker to know that, or experience in producing events, man, you can have the wrong idea about why that speaker's not coming and shaking your hand, or why they're not signing books before an event, because it messes up some other things. But the inexperienced person would have a wrong conclusion. You know, one of the things I talked about in one of my classes this week, and I'm going to share it quickly, is that I thought the stop sign, S-T-O-P, meant God bless America. Because when I was young, someone that I drove to the stop sign with in their car, every time they had to stop and there was a traffic jam, he'd say, God bless America. So I started learning that stop meant God bless America long before I could read. Sometimes we learn in our self-talk things that we think connect to something that's wrong. Sometimes the connection is to ourselves. We call ourselves ugly or lazy or stupid or dysfunctional, when the truth is we just haven't learned. Sometimes we label things that are self-incriminating because we're so micro-focused. I call it ionizing. You're ionizing every little bitty detail that you've not backed up to see how far you've grown. Sometimes you're just so super achiever perfectionistic that you've lost focus on it was great enough the first time, and what you're doing now is beyond fabulous. We all need friends and community for that as gifted women and gifted children and gifted girls. And sometimes gifted communities can be brutal about how they affirm or not affirm what's going on in your life. So it's very important to pick boundaries with people who can be positive, affirming friends in your life, positive, truthful friends in your life, or professionals. You see, sometimes bad news may need to be delivered. The difficult news that says, yeah, that's kind of true about you, but I wouldn't call it that stupid or something negative. I'd call it ill-prepared. And I would say that it's ill-prepared because you're marvelous at this, but you need to put in some steps to make sure your preparation's ready. You know, that's important in our lives, and that's important in our self-talk, because to say that someone is together but missing a step is a very different personal message than to say, you're just a mess up. You know, missing a step means that you simply, probably as a gifted girl, assimilated, and you didn't take the time to figure out what it was, because gifted girls and women and creative girls and women assimilate. They create. They actualize things. Sometimes they go where no one's gone before, and in the experience, they have more experience, and they can go back and do it differently and better the next time, or more simply. May not be better. It may be a simpler version. May not need a big production. But our self-talk needs to be open to the concept of saying, what was this experience? How did it feel? Did it achieve what I was trying to do? Am I willing to pay this price again? Is it enjoyable? Is this something that's meaningful to me? Because within those questions, create a whole new scope of self-talk that lead to a life you love. I would love to pop this to Dr. Edith to talk about how making changes can lead to a life you love through self-talk.
As you look at your life, to be able to change and go forward with your self-talk is you need to look at it and be aware of it. And then as you incorporate and integrate the new ideas or the new way you frame things. Okay, as Sweetie was talking, as I looked at it this way and I wasn't worth 2 cents. But no, I did accomplish this, or in that process I learned this. Then you become, okay, forward moving. It's just like getting a snowball, since we all have lots of snow right now, to move down the hill. When you first started, it goes really slowly. But if you add that self-talk in that says, I can learn, I am teachable, I can change how my thoughts are going, I know what's of value to me, that ball picks up speed. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's you growing and being able to express who you are from your gifts, from that soul point on you that says, I am, and I am something special. And recognizing that, realizing that, and being able to move forward is important. Get the momentum going just by catching one thought right now, and reframing it so that you can be that person we all know you are.
I love that, Dr. Edith. I appreciate your words always, because you bring us back to a place that says we are able. I love the way you sign letters. It says honoring all that we are. And you know, self-talk is about honoring yourself. It's about honoring yourself, your processes, your choices, and the way that you learn. And I hope to encourage you today, and I hope all of us have encouraged you today, to really look and engage your self-talk, to become aware of what's running in your head. What are the voices saying? You know, get to know them. Tell a few of them that aren't very nice to go away. And for those of you that have been in a place where you really have labeled yourself something, know that you are enough right now as you are. If you need to learn something, I bet you're teachable. And you know what? There are many who are willing to help you get there. This has been Sweetie Berry at Between Us Girls. We're so glad to be with you each Wednesday at 10 a.m. Gifted girls of all ages and creatives come together to discuss topics that affect our adventures in living gifted. We have a website, darewhimsy.com. That's DAREWHIMSY.com. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/darewhimsy. We hope you'll join us. On Thursdays, our writers come together, and there are many of us, and we share just a sister post on the topic at hand. This week's topic was, what about self-talk? We write a few short paragraphs about what self-talk works in our life, our experience with us, and some of us even have a read more where you can go back to our home website where we may have a product, a further post, or an article, or resources on the topic. We hope that you'll follow us home. Following us home means going to our websites to learn more about us if you resonate with us. You may not resonate with everyone, and we certainly don't expect you to visit all, but we love to have a cuppa together, and that means coming together and sharing ideas as gifted women and sharing resources. We look forward at Dare Whimsy to being with you each week. We have everything from lifestyle interest things to food to preparations to systems. And our contributors all come together on Wednesdays for this show, Between Us Girls, to share their personal lives as well as their professional perspectives. We look forward to being with you each week, and we hope you'll be with us again. I'm going to ask our guys one more time. We have about 5 minutes left, so if we quickly each share a self-talk that we use in our own life that's empowering, and then we'll sign off. All right? Sarah, I'd like to pull you up first if that's all right. Here we go.
Hello, I'm Sarah Cook, and some of the things I say are money flows easily to me. I have more than enough. I am talented. I can learn all things as long as I have just a little bit of time to do it, and that I have the gifts and talents that God's created for me for a reason, and that I'm blessed and deserving to be able to share them with others.
Fantastic. Would you popcorn to someone?
All right, Martina, you're up.
Mine sounds very similar to Sarah's. I'm blessed and favored. My goal is to reach my fullest potential and to help others reach theirs. And I will pop over to Edith.
My self-talk is that I know my values and my beliefs. I have the choice to reframe those, choose what is my message to myself today. And as I talk with others, helping them to find their message for themselves so that we can be all that we can be and express our talents exuberantly. And I'll give it to Lucy.
Yeah, my self-talk that I like to say to myself throughout the day is, I am chosen, I am blessed, and I am loved by the Most High God, my Creator. And I will hop it on over to Bobby.
What I like to say in my self-talk is that um, I can do anything if I believe in myself. I like to know that my life is a choice. I can choose to be positive or I can choose to be negative. And today I'm choosing to be positive. That's what I say every day. And Miss Bobby is all about creating fun adventures wherever she goes. So I just want to dare you to find what your happy place is. And I'll hand it back to Sweetie.
You know, the one that I choose right now, and it's a new one for me this year, is this is my life and it's worth living in a life I love. And if it's learnable, I can be taught. And so that helps me understand that I am worth valuing enough to choose to live a life I love. And I've absolutely made different choices in my life this year, from everything from starting Dare Whimsy to starting another program called Sweetie School. And guess what? It's actualizing. I'm loving my life. I'm shrinking as I speak, and I'm creating a life I love. When you change your self-talk, you can change your life if you're willing to do the work and do the steps, break it down, and make it successful. I encourage you to use self-talk to empower your life, to change things about your life that maybe aren't so positive that you said to yourself. Because I promise you, you're worth loving and you're perfect just as you are. If you want to learn to do something differently or have different outcomes, it's learnable. The question is, are you teachable? This has been Sweetie Berry with Between Us Girls, the Women of Dare Whimsy. I appreciate you being with us today, and we look forward to talking again. See you next Wednesday, and see you tomorrow at darewhimsy.com on the blog to talk about what we personally do, each of us, to do self-talk. Have a great day.